Hello, welcome to our presentation, Making Art Mathematically. My name is Carla DeMars, and I'm a talented visual arts teacher in Livingston Parish, Louisiana.
And my name is Cindy Perilou. I'm also a talented art teacher in Livingston Parish. Before we start today, we'd like to invite you to download the booklet that's included in our resource section, and that goes along with the presentation that we will be giving today.
We would like to first explain that our district asked us to develop these art lessons because they identified deficits in our standardized test scores for mathematics, particularly in the area of fractions. So these art lessons are intended to reinforce skills taught in the math classroom.
We will be sharing 3 units today based on 3 different artists. The first will be on Ellsworth Kelly, the second will be on Wayne Tebow, and we'll finish up with Terence Osborne. All of these lessons relate to art standards as well as math national standards.
We ask you to follow along with us as we go through our slide presentation based on the booklet that you've downloaded.
And so our slide presentation, focus on fractions. As we know, right brain artistic students think differently and grasp concepts best visually. The purpose of these lessons is to reinforce student learning of fractions by creating visual representation. These lessons can be used in the art classroom or shared in the math classroom, or even used for early finisher lessons. There are several concepts that will be covered in math. It's what is a whole and parts of a whole. But the art concepts and points that will be covered are color theory, grids, observational drawings, emotional color, and one-point perspective. We'll begin our lessons with Ellsworth Kelly. The color wheel can be used as an example for fractions. You look at each color as parts of a whole. So our first lesson is based on color theory, where we can introduce or reinforce primary, secondary, warm, and cool colors. It's on page 2 in your booklet. Page 3 is a worksheet for the students to actually create their own color wheel. Page 4 in the book is intended to move from fractions based on a shape to a number line. If you're an art teacher, you may just want to skip over page 4, or you can pass it along to your math teacher. On page 5, we begin to prepare the pieces for our Ellsworth Kelly styled collage. You will demonstrate as the students work to create their own strips of paper that will be used for gluing down and making the collage. There are detailed instructions on page 5. There's also a chart that you can fill in as a large group to help the students compare the fractions. For example, 1/2 is equal to 2/4. And it gives you a visual aid with the strips so that they can start to see this. Make sure that the students only label one side of the strips as you're producing this, because the other side will be the one that shows up in the actual artwork. On page 6, you basically repeat the lesson of the day before, only you create thirds instead of halves. Ellsworth Kelly is an American artist who worked as a painter, sculptor, and printmaker. He was even a teacher for a while. He was an artist during World War II. He worked with the famous Ghost Army to create units of tanks that were inflatable. And they blew up a whole army of these called the Ghost Army to fool the enemy into thinking that we were much more powerful than we actually were. Ellsworth Kelly was a loner and a stutterer who worked in public education. In 1953, he was actually evicted from his apartment in Paris when he returned to the United States and began his career as a teacher and professional artist. His first abstract work was based on how light is dispersed on the surface of water, and it was called The Scene, 1950. It was a black and white painting which arranged rectangles by choice. Your project for this will actually be creating a classroom quilt. Each student will make a 10 by 10 piece that will be joined together on the back using painter's tape to make a large quilt that you can display in your hallway. On page 8, you have a printable student sheet based on Colors for a Large Wall, 1951, by Ellsworth Kelly. It's actually almost 8 feet square to give the students some concept of how large his pieces were. It's a critique sort of lesson where you go through and discuss the work. On page 9, we start to develop creating the classroom quilt. Page 10, we've discovered through teaching these lessons that younger students had a really hard time drawing a grid to create their piece of work. So we've put in here 10A and 10B, which you can create by just running the copy machine and having the younger students cut it out and glue their pieces directly to the piece of paper. In addition to the classroom quilt, the students have an activity which they will use all of the leftover pieces from the grids to create a robot. There is a paper on page 12 in your book which asks the students to write about and think about their own robot.
Our next artist is Wayne Tebow. On page 14, it outlines some information about the artist. He was a painter, illustrator, and art teacher. He's probably best known for his paintings of cakes, desserts, and other sweets. You can see in the middle of the page there is a talk about it section where students will talk about the art, and the art vocabulary that is covered is overlapping eye level, point of view, and texture. The first lesson in this unit is to draw a cupcake. Students will practice drawing a cupcake 6 times and then consider that what is the whole. All of the cupcakes together create the whole, with each cupcake being a part of this whole. Students are then asked to decorate their cakes and describe the whole using fractions. Another lesson is based on his Gumball Machine. Students are asked to look at works of art and describe, analyze, and reflect, and then express opinions about the work of art. This is on page 17 of the booklet. These same studio habits of mind used in art can also be applied to the study of other disciplines such as math. They help students articulate what they are learning. For the lessons, there are 2 sets of instructions based on skill level. In both, students will draw the Tebow-style gumball machine, but the gumballs that are included will be based on their level of understanding of fractions. The final lesson in this section is a game where students will design a cake and then use dice to pass slices to the left or the right. Students will record an equation on the tally sheet, which is included. And when teachers call time, students will write a number to represent the amount of cake that they have. The student with the most cake wins. Templates for this lesson are included on page 22 and 23 of the booklet.
Our final lesson is based on New Orleans artist Terence Osborne. He was actually a talented art student. After graduating from Xavier University, he became a talented art teacher. Hurricane Katrina destroyed the city of New Orleans. And when we returned and started to rebuild, Mr. Osborne found that he was actually making more money from his art commissions than he was as a teacher. So he decided to become a full-time artist. He's most famous for his works based on shotgun houses.
Now it's time to create. There are 2 levels of this Terence Osborne style shotgun house lesson. In the first lesson, students will draw a row of houses. They will focus on the horizon line and color as well as fractions. In the second, more advanced lesson, students will create houses using 1-point perspective, also focusing on color and the fraction lesson.
We've included a link of an instructional video created for students to learn about shotgun houses that actually includes an interview with the artist. We'd like to thank you for joining us for this program. We have included our emails at the conclusion of the slideshow if you have any questions.
Historic shotgun houses are everywhere in New Orleans. Most were built between the 1830s and 1940s. They were designed to fit the long, narrow lots of land created when families divided their plantations. Shotguns have a roof line that slopes to the sides and are usually just 1 room wide with no hallway. They got the nickname because it said you could fire a shotgun through the front door and it would pass out the back door without hitting anything. Because there is no hallway, family members pass through each other's rooms to reach other parts of the house. The shotguns usually have a front porch or a stoop where residents can sit in the shade and chat with neighbors.
We visited the Terence Osborne Gallery located on Magazine Street in New Orleans. He's famous for his paintings of shotgun houses. As we left the gallery, we ran into Mr. Osborne on the street. He was gracious enough to grant us an interview. So, tell us about your shotgun art, Mr. Osborne.
So the shotgun houses, right? I used to play under the houses all the time when I was a kid. And we lived in only shotguns. My parents moved around a lot. But I used to play archaeologist, like digging underneath the houses for little bottles and stuff, like Coke bottles and things like that. That was my first hustle, right? Take them to the store and get some money for them. But that helped me to understand the structure of the house. So as an adult, when I paint them, I just paint them from memory because I know what's underneath, I know what's in, I know what's on the outside, it's that kind of thing.
So building them dimensionally, where did that come from?
It's from the same thing, really. You know, like I don't want you to pass my art when you see it. So a lot of times I push the color and I also push the painting out. So you'll see that I'm working on a relief piece or 3D. So the building the house is the same thing. It's my effort to share it with you, to make you come over and look at it.
What inspires your sense of color? It's so vivid and bright.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, most of the time when I see artwork, I'm looking at content and like structure and things like that. The things that artists look for. The color is usually not there, right? So what I try to do is create what I want to see. And rather than seeing a bowl of fruit, I want to see a jar of preserves. You know, I want the best of it. You know, I want the wine of the grapes. So
We were so excited to speak with Mr. Osborne about his artwork and his creative processes. Thanks so much. Fun fact, porches in New Orleans are often painted haint blue. Locals call it dirt dauber blue. Some believe the color wards off evil spirits or haunts. Legend says a haint can't cross water. So blue is painted on the window frames, door frames, shutters, ceilings, all to trick the haint into thinking that there's water there and to keep them from entering the house.